Billy Mitchell is here.
Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. House Regulated Industries will reconvene from the recess from this morning. We'll be dealing with HB 1530. And I understand that they now have moved to substitute LC 490946S, if that's correct. And there is a constitutional amendment, HR 581 LC 0814S. Is that correct? All right. Representative O'Neill, if you would. O'Neill, what did I say? O'Neill. I'm thinking about, my God, I'm thinking about former member Larry O'Neill, Representative Neal. If you would, and I think most of the members remember from this morning, the discussion on the original version, could you go through here and show us what changes have been made in substitute?
1530, correct.
1530.
Okay. So the first change we're going to reference is page 194, Chairman Collins' sunset recommendation. We have it for June 30th, 2028. If anybody on the committee feels inclined to change that number, please advise. But that's the sunset that was requested. $194 and $169.
194, 159,
169
169.
refers to the sunset.
All right. Any other changes?
There were, there was a suggestion by Legislative Council, and we basically just replaced some semicolons from a period. But in light of the discussion that was had this morning and the comments from Representative Jones and Williamson and Martin, basically, we just wanted to make the point, as well as Lynn Riley, that on line 72, if you'll notice there, it says they will agree, the student has to agree in writing at the time of the application for acceptance into the authorized program, and that upon acceptance, they shall be bound by the terms and the conditions established by the Commission for Hope Small Business Grants and the participating institution in which is he enrolled. That could actually result in the student taking the courses, and even though the $14,000 that's part of that cost that that student will be receiving, the commission as well as the eligible institution can require them to perhaps only receive $3,000 or $4,000 the first year, or $3,000 or $4,000 the second year. They can actually control the money and how it is given, and that they continue to meet the requirements of the business plan that they have agreed to as part of their authorized program. So it is giving a lot of checks and balances through the system. So this is not a matter of just throwing money at people. This is a matter of following a business plan and then being able to do it. And I think there was some questions this morning as to whether or not that could be done. And the answer is yes, it can be done. Also on page 5, you will see all of the criteria that the student has to agree to as part of the acceptance of any investment funds as part and parcel of the education program. So again, not only does the commission have a say on this, but the eligible institution has a say in this, so that the student would have to meet all of the criteria that is set up as part and parcel of their business plan. As Representative Neal indicated, we are putting sunsets. So this would be basically a 5 or 6 year pilot program to see the success of it. And again, we are, I think it's in the legal opinion that's done, that was pointed out, that we are talking about spending less per student on this 20,000 than if that student had taken the traditional Hope and gone to a university system. They would be spending a lot more of Hope dollars relating to this. And then I think the final thing that's worth mentioning is that if we look at the Constitution and what the reserves are for Hope, presently there is approximately $700 million over that required amount of reserve. So I believe that, again, we are not expanding the number of people who could get Hope. You still have to meet the criteria of being a Hope Scholar, but instead of taking the traditional route of perhaps going to the University of Georgia for 4 years or taking a technical course for 2 years, you're taking the choice of doing this program and probably net saving the system close to $30,000 per student. So that's what the House bill does. On the resolution that you have before you, if you'll notice on line 14, the word funds has been included. So it's used for economic development programs and purpose to provide the funds to support small businesses located in Georgia, et cetera. So that makes it consistent that these are not loans. This is a grant. And again, if Ms. Riley and the others who feel that a constitutional amendment is necessary, both items, legislative items, are included. If in fact that ultimately, either through whatever legal process is involved, it's found that this can pass without a constitutional amendment, then that may occur also. But again, you have the enabling legislation and a constitutional amendment, whether or not the constitutional amendment has to be done. So if there's, I'll be happy to answer any other questions, but those are the principal things that were changed. And again, I think going back to some of the points that Representative Jasper brought up in the very first meeting that we had about this bill, we now have fleshed out the very specifics of the program. This is not a free lunch. This is somebody deciding that they want to be whether it's a funeral director, whether it's a plumber, whether it's a heart surgeon, whatever it may be, they are going to have to complete a individual's type of study to learn things such as how to put together a business plan, how to be able to go to the bank for a loan, being able to read a financial statement, and any other business skills that will be necessary to make this person give them a better shot at being successful in business. And again, please understand that I think Representative Neal's key point here is one size doesn't fit all. There are certain students that learn better by doing and getting the necessary academic background to be able to put together the package. But we have a lot of empty seats in the university system. It would be nice to put behinds in those seats and have somebody go out and work and learn, not just from whatever they learn academically, but through the school of hard knocks by having exposure to business people who will give them a business plan and perhaps allow them to also work within their business. So this is an innovative approach. I think you've all recognized the vision that Representative Neal has. But the one thing that we shouldn't lose sight of, again, is our very first comments today. The HOPE monies are for the student. That's the primary responsibility. It is not just to glorify the institutions that they go to. So if we can keep focused on that, I think you'll see the merits of both the resolution and the underlining bill. And I'll be happy to answer any of the questions, as I know Representative Neal would also.
Any questions from any of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I got this.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions to Representative Neal. Do we have an expected demand for this program? Do we have any kind of expected demand?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. Official documentation, no. But when it comes to reports that I'm getting back from the chamber that spoke this morning, tech schools that I've already met with over the past 2 years, the presidents, the tech school, the technical colleges of Georgia, there is a demand when it comes to the economic development side. There's a demand when it comes to the program itself in the school, in the colleges and universities. And so the short answer is yes, there is a demand, but it's in different, it's from different directions depending on the entity. So from the chamber's perspective, it's an economic development need. From the collegiate perspective, it's different. So it depends on what area we're speaking about as to the demand that's needed, that resides currently.
Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up, so Representative Neal, the reason why I asked that question, because it would be great if this august body could know what the expected fiscal impact to the Hope Scholarship bucket, because we often hear that, Hope Scholarship dollars, depending on the health of our economy here in Georgia.
Thank you so much for the question. So as we were mentioning through this process, there's no increase. And just in reference to the comments that were made by Les here, doing this program actually saves the state $30,000 per student because of the fact they cannot double dip. So financially, one, there's no increase. Two, it saves our HOPE program in Georgia is $30,000 per student. And yeah, I think those are the two top priorities, but those two items are the number one impact. Outside of that, I think Georgia Student Finance has referenced administrative costs in relation to, setting up different program or what have you, but that's on the administrative side that would go to implement any program. But outside of that, there's no change financially to the HOPE, to the program, and you're saving $30,000 per student.
My last question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So So will dual enrollment students also be able to participate? Because we know, although dual enrollment program has been very, very successful here in Georgia, but that also has impacted students once they graduated from high school and go in physically into their freshman year. Some of their HOPE dollars was used, and they did not know that, you know, all their dollars were used. Will this program have a similar impact, much like the dual enrollment program, as it relates to HOPE?
This program will not affect dual enrollment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, actually, it might depend on what rules and regs are set by the powers that be, since they have this, both the schools and the lottery and the all parties concerned will have the say about drafting whatever plan for this, if I understand right. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
I think the question was from Representative Jackson is whether or not somebody who was in dual enrollment could then decide, instead of going to the University of Georgia for 4 years, they could go to this program. If they choose this program, then then the HOPE is going to spend less money than if that child had gone to the University of Georgia for 4 years. So it actually will be less money, not more money.
The point I'm making though is that all the entities will have a say in crafting the points of this program.
There will be
The
regulations.
The universities or tech schools,
Mhm.
if they wish to participate, the Hope Scholarship, i.e., which would then be the Student Finance Commission, correct?
Yes, the Student Finance Commission could do regulations to further tighten the possibilities for this program, but it would not, in all likelihood, result in any more money being spent. Taking this program route would actually be less money being spent.
So in fact, what we have here is what we've got here is just basically a blueprint for a possibility of a program called Small Business Incubator, Apprenticeship, and Work Study Program.
That's exactly
So
right.
because this just enables, and then the real devil in the details would come to the powers that be when they start trying to put together the regulations as to how it will function or if it will function.
Yes, it will take a bureaucracy.
And that's all going to be based ultimately, like everything else, that's going to be based on the available money that they're willing to put forth to this.
I think everything you said up to the very last 3 words is correct, but I believe they can draft whatever regulations they want to. I think the only point that should be underscored is that no matter how restrictive or flexible they make this program, the total amount of HOPE dollars that child is going to be receiving will be less under this, because we're capped at 20,000, than they would with almost any other program.
Young adult.
Young adult, that's it.
Everybody keeps wanting to call these children.
That's it.
These aren't children. These are young adults.
When you have children in college and you're paying tuition, they are children, but you're right. They are.
We continue to
you-
call
you-
ours children,
That's right.
but in fact, they're young adults once they've got out of high school and they're going into this. But I still go back to say that these regulations would have to be established by the universities or the tech schools and the Student Finance
and Student
Commission,
Finance.
HOPE, and all of those.
Yes.
And all of that is in fact will be based on categorically how much money are they willing to give up into this. So,
There'll be a lot of
Yeah.
belts and suspenders. I
all
agree.
right, let's see. Who else do we have up there? We've got Chairman Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. As we all are at times like this, I've been in a retirement meeting. And just getting here, have we done the constitutional amendment as yet?
Not yet.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just,
move on to it in a minute.
no, I understand that. I have a couple of questions. I'd like to hear more about this $30,000 because my understanding is the average HOPE award, and unless we're at what we call our level research institutions is actually not anywhere near $50,000. So when the gentlemen say they're spending 20 and saving us 30, I don't think the Hope Award, the average Hope Award, is anywhere close to $50,000. So I'd love to see that math. Then I heard as I was joining from retirement that we've sunset in the enabling statute. I'd like the lady or Mr. Schneider to explain to me how we sunset a constitutional amendment, because what I've seen in the constitutional amendment is it lays Hope wide open once it's approved in the Constitution for other enabling legislation to come and do just about anything it wants. So I just wondered if the gentleman could explain to me how you sunset a constitutional amendment.
I know Representative Neal will respond to Representative Martin. The sunsets are in the bill itself, not the
I understand that, but the constitutional amendment that has to be passed to make the bill go. So if you sunset that particular program, but we've opened, how many times have we opened up Hope since 1992? How many constitutional amendments have we had to change what Hope can be spent on?
I'm aware of the ones that Governor Bonds was involved with that narrowed the number of items that could be Hope dollars could be spent.
So it actually narrowed the expenses of Hope. How many are you aware of that we have opened up expenditures for Hope?
I don't believe we have.
I'm sorry?
I don't believe we have.
And yet here on the day before day 28, we're expected to look at a constitutional amendment that's going to lay wide open and expose Hope, which we've been watching, which this governor has been watching closely over the last 3.5 years to try to get the funding back up at our research universities and some state colleges to 90% base. We're going to lay that wide open through a constitutional amendment the day before day 28 with enabling language that requires a sunset.
The enabling language.
Advocating.
I'm sorry. The enabling language that has the sunset in it in the bill, it, again, is in response to what was talked about in the committee this morning. If the bill goes away after the sunset date, even though something is in the Constitution, there would not be a program that would be available for anyone.
But
even
that program could pass with the 91 votes. I do have some information here from student finance. The tuition at Georgia, which is one of our most expensive institutions, is $10,000 a year. At 90%, that tuition would be $36,000 over 4 years. So, I mean, it's the most expensive place. So, I mean, it's a hyperbolic statement to say this is going to save $30,000 per student.
Again, I am relying upon the letter that was written by legislative counsel that indicated that a student would forego as much as an estimated $30,000 in Hope Awards. Again, that student has many options of what they want to do. And again, it's just giving the students their choice.
Well, to follow up on that, they forego the $30,000 in Hope Awards. That doesn't mean they don't get the $14,000 for their business.
They are getting the 14 plus the 6 that the university or the technical school could charge. They may charge less for that course, but they have an opportunity to get up to 30% of the 20,000. If they decide to do less than that, then that may be an acceptable course of study. But at the end of the day, what is trying to be done is to set the parameters for the requirements of this program, the belts and suspenders that we've put on it, as well as the opportunity that certain students learn better than just traditional classroom instruction.
I understand that, but I just want to get back to the fact that the letter says they may forego $30,000 in Hope Award doesn't mean they are not getting that money where else. I mean, I will put on the record before the committee the text from student finance. Georgia, the University of Georgia is one of the most expensive universities we have, along with Georgia Tech, Georgia State. And the Medical College of Georgia, Augusta University now, and Hope currently would pay approximately $36,000. So when you give 20 and you're telling me you're saving 30, that adds up to 50. That's a far cry from 36 at the most expensive place. And technical schools and regional colleges are far less. So let's just don't get caught in the hyperbolic statement of this somehow saves $30,000 for a student, because it just doesn't.
And any monies that are saved, and I don't want to quibble over the amount, but if someone was eligible for a Zell Miller scholarship and got the full board, but decided that this type of program was better for them, then I believe that would be a net savings to the lottery, to the Hope monies, and is something that a student is making a choice to do. So again, I know it's new and I know it's innovative, and I think what we're trying to do here is to address students that would learn in a better way for them, customizing the situation for them. And I could expect
The last question, are you familiar with the small business development program that they have at the University of Georgia?
I know there is
Campus now,
one.
right?
I'm sorry.
You know, they're doing this right on campus now. They have a business incubator on just on North Campus up there, just south of Broad Street. We toured it. We toured it with higher education folks this fall. And I'll end with this, Chairman Powell. The lady keeps talking about speaking with people at technical schools and people at universities. I've met with quite a few. I mean, more than double digits of technical schools and university presidents this session. Just this morning, the Atlanta Technical School president was in here. Not a single person has mentioned this initiative. Not one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I may,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
if I may respond.
Certainly.
So first, in reference to the $30,000 savings, if we are going to consistently reference the legal opinion document, pardon me, if we're going to consistently reference the legal opinion document, we need to be okay with acknowledging each page of that. On page 3 of that, it states $30,000 in savings. That's not me making anything up. That's not Mr. Les making anything up. That is the legal opinion that is being referenced constantly.
Did you read the exact language?
Sure. A student would forego as much as an estimated $30,000 in Hope Awards.
Okay, and again, I just want to get with the lady, because I think you've got a good idea here. I just think that the funding mechanism is not the right place. But you read as much as 30,000 in Hope Award, but you're not saying you would save $30,000. That's clearly different. So just to be clear on that, I believe what the man says. You would forego 30,000 in Hope Award. You would just take that money and spend it elsewhere.
And thank you so much for the comments. I want to also make some more comments. The first thing is every student is not and cannot get into the University of Georgia. Every student cannot and will not get into the University of Georgia. Additionally, with that, I'm so glad you referenced Atlanta Tech. Atlanta Tech is the school that I met with numerous times, done a lot of work with them. But they actually wrote the curriculum that's in the back of the document that you all have that came from the Dean of Business at Atlanta Tech. They've been a part of this program. Separate from that, I have met with the commissioner and the deputy commissioner of the Tech Schools of Georgia. Matter of fact, I think the deputy commissioner is sitting right behind me. They have been very involved in this process as well. So I want to make sure that we understand that I've been working on this for 2 years. To your point, when you reference how long the short time frame, this resolution, like I mentioned, has been drafted since the beginning of the year. We don't have the luxury of time here. We all understand that. So it being presented today is just the situation we're in. And so with that, I would hope people would have grace and explore what we're trying to do here and keep an open mind and just realize we are all on the same team. Thank you.
Who?
Speaker Pro Tem.
Speaker Pro Tem Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question for the author. When I read through the bill, the language, it's clearly intended to be a program in conjunction with the technical college system. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So a couple things. First of all, I like your idea of encouraging students to go to technical college and to have an entrepreneur type program with some sort of a grant or loan program. I do have a concern taking it out of lottery, given that it's oriented towards a student that would be most likely planning to go to technical college. The actual cost to the lottery would be $14,000. I looked at the tuition for the technical college for each semester. If you went 4 semesters, that's where the $6,000 fits in. It would be $6,000. So the extra hit to the lottery would not be a $30,000 savings. It would be a $14,000 additional cost to the lottery. That's my concern, is for the first time in 30 years, we would have opened up the lottery. We did narrow at one time since I've been here by general legislation. We took out the ability to use for technology because, you know, as we learned in 2011, the lottery lines were crossing with tuition increases. In 7 years, most years we haven't had a tuition increase. Most tuition increases in that 7 years have been 2% to 0%. As the lottery board is aware, and student finance, as we do eventually incur tuition increases, particularly with this inflation, you know, we will have fewer lottery dollars to put towards the programs that we have. And we've expanded by general law the programs in the technical college that you are eligible for 100%. This would compete with those dollars. And so I think it's an intriguing proposal that you have, and it shows a lot of thought. And I really commend you for thinking outside the box, particularly with some sort of a loan program or another funding source. Certainly, I understand the Metro Chamber's in favor of this. I think it'd be an awesome program for them to come up with a fund to, perhaps with Atlanta Technical College, to pilot something like this so that we could see something move forward. But I would have a concern with the constitutional amendment that would, on average, cost $14,000 more per student to give them both the loan and the tuition. But thank you. Thank you very much for your, really sort of brilliant thought in looking at this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem.
And I want to make a comment. Thank you so much for your comments. You know, I respect you. We have a great relationship for many years now. I would love to have you on board with this, but I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much.
Do we have anyone else online before we move to the others? Oh. Chairman Williams.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it not true that I complimented you on the great professional job you did this morning presenting the bill? I was watching online. So I echo everything the Pro Tem just said. Would you not agree this is a big out of the box idea that you're bringing to this General Assembly? And like most big transformative ideas, sometimes it takes more than 1 year to get them through. Would you be amenable to the idea of maybe hitting the pause button on this and trying to think out? Because obviously you hear some concerns about making such a substantive change to the lottery that in this format, I simply can't support it. Would you be amenable to basically bringing an idea or having some sort of follow-up study committees to try to help you refine this idea in a manner that would be palatable to many of us?
Yeah, so thank you so much for the comments and the compliments. I would push back only to say no on pause, because especially in light of COVID and how so many people had to transfer from working for somebody to working for themselves through COVID because they couldn't go to work. They had to become entrepreneurs and had no idea of how to do that while trying to navigate, make money for themselves. So I feel that COVID has pushed us to a point where, and I truly believe this in all legislation I push, sometimes you don't have the luxury of time because people need help now. And when people need help now, it is important for this body to respond to them as soon as possible. That is our job down here, is to come with ideas, whether they're innovative or not, whether anything that you can think of that can make Georgians' lives better now is, I think, the posture we should always be in. Because sometimes, like this moment, you don't have the luxury of time. So what I would submit is, if we could work through this moment, we've been given this moment for a reason. If there's anything, and like I said, reference Collins, he made his reference, put it in there immediately. Like, we have no issue with that. But the only reason I push back, and the reason this came from the beginning, was because there are a lot of small business owners that are kind of floating and need help and need support. And that's where the idea came from. And so for the reason that people need help now is the only reason I would say I would not feel comfortable pausing.
Well, is it not true that even Small Business Administration says that new business startups, 90% of them fail in the first few years? And is that not true? And I'm going to, Mr. Snyder, you don't have to answer any more questions from me. I just support the concept in general. And Mr. Chairman, you can turn my microphone off. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, let's see here. Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have another country heard from.
Sorry, I wasn't here this morning. Yes, and didn't hear. I just want to acknowledge Les sitting there, and with the work he's done between the bill we saw a few weeks ago and what we have today, it certainly has a lot of difference. I just have a couple of questions, and you may have answered them this morning, but I just need to answer them now for me. But I have a couple of statements too. We make this statement that, well, not everybody can go to the University of Georgia. Well, guys, let me just educate you a minute. We have open access to universities all across our state. And that means anybody can go at any level, and the payment level is all over the place. It's very low and very affordable. And so when we say we can't go to UGA, qualifying why we have open access. And let's just remember that. And this is partly what the bill addresses. Someone said a moment ago, does this affect only TCSG? When I read it, it affects both.
Right.
Someone said a moment ago, it only affected TCSG.
I think one of the questioners did, and I think I want to make sure that's very clear, whether you go to a technical school or a public college or even a private college, and if they're willing, as Representative Powell indicated, to live through all the regulations and all the procedures or whatever, any of those institutions who have empty seats can help any student in this state.
Sure.
And if I could address that. So my response to the speaker is in reference to TCS. Technical schools have been the one that have provided the curriculum thus far. The traditional schools, they are interested. They would have to institute it like in kind of like a continuing education, micro credential, that's the right word, micro credential sort of way. And they would be, and upon speaking to them, they're waiting on to see what happens with this for them to decide on how they move with the micro credentials through the continuing education. And I'll let Les continue.
So my questions are, like on line 122, we talk about required coursework. So you're asking they would develop a new coursework standard, not that they would be in any of the traditional TCSD programs, that they would create a new one just for this. Is that not true?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. I've already met with the tech schools and developed a curriculum. It should be provided to you, pardon me, Jan, I'm not sure if they received those documents. But in the documents, at the end of it, there's an outline of the curriculum, potential curriculum that has been provided.
So that, I think you remember from the very first time we talked about this, you know, one of the problems I had with it is that we seem to be not putting a value on the education that students are getting from there. And I understand that we're trying to find an alternative idea for alternative students. And I too have a problem with the $30,000 thing, but I think I understand it. You know, because I would wish that our students would be getting a degree, could do both of these and get a degree. And they're going to be better off for it, not just a shortened version of something just to get your grant and move on. I guess the higher ed in me comes out thinking about how that's just going to leave some people, you know, not able to continue on. I think I read somewhere in here that which I think I read it wrong the first time on 128, a participating student who accepts investment funds shall not be eligible for any other scholarship or grant provided for under this part. And that bothered me a little bit because that to me says that they can't receive scholarship to continue their education. That may or may not be right.
What we did here, you know, I, like you, may be accused of being a little bit of an educational snob because you and I may
Are you
believe.
calling me a snob?
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
calling you an
Just make sure.
educational snob. And that may be that we may want to have our children go to the traditional four-year college, get the maximum degree. But as number of representatives pointed out during the subcommittee hearing, there's a number of instances where there are a number of people who, whether they're going to go in the HVAC business, whether they're going to go into real estate, whether they're going to go into funeral services, whatever they're going to do, it may be that for their job objectives, this is the better path for them. And I'm not going to be as much of an educational snob to really rob that student of that choice. And that's where we are. But you're right. It may be that 98% of the people go the traditional route, but there may be 1 or 2% of the entire student population that are going to be better off taking this route and actually going to school at all, as opposed to not doing it because they do want to they have that entrepreneurial zeal to get something done in a little different fashion. So you're right. We are not saying this fits all, but the whole premise is one size doesn't fit all when it comes to education. You got to help the student. And to your other point, yes, in order for this not to be a money grab on behalf of the student has to choose. They have to choose whether they're going to go this route or they're going to go the traditional Hope route and use that. If the committee or during the entire process decides, well, we wanted to take 2 bites at the apple, that's the choice of the committee and the legislature. But then I know we will hear arguments from the people who don't want this to happen at all to say, well, then these people are really going to add money to the cost of the lottery system and put a strain on it. So I can't, Representative Neal never wanted the perfect to get in the way of the possible here. So we were not doing this to give people a million bites at the apple. We're simply saying there are some students that are going to adapt better to this type of program than the traditional one that you and I may want most students to follow.
So, Mr. Snyder, I think the difference in where me and you are getting crossed up, and we have always on this issue,
Right.
is that this is a different program than what TCSGs do. Because when you reference someone doing a technical degree in the heating and air,
That's right.
to be effective, to have a business, they've got to have the certificate.
There's no question,
So-
and they will have to do that. The question becomes whether somebody who has an entrepreneurial idea or perhaps wants to go into the funeral business that 2 of the members of this committee are on, they may find the better way to do it is to take courses in how to develop a business plan, how to go to a bank for a loan, how to to learn sitting by the knee of the people who are in the business and doing a work study program with them, in addition to the courses that we decide that a good business person should have. So it is an alternative. We are customizing a course to these future entrepreneurs at the end of the day. And they may spend a little less time in the fraternity house. They may drink a little less beer, but they may be better ready for what they want to do with their future.
Mr. Chairman, I continue. I guess in mind, I would like to see us, I think Ms. Bruce Williamson talked about, see us appropriate dollars. It does bother me that we're cracking the lottery hope thing. In my gut, it just bothers me, as I was here 10 years ago when we went through all that. And, you know, to have some financial stability, it's like, how many are we going to do per school? I know it gets into the weeds of what's in here, but
the regs would govern that.
Yeah.
The regs could limit that. The regs could do a lot of things to put all the belts and suspenders that Representative Powell talked about, that there's a lot of hoops that have to be gone through, but this is the blueprint for how to begin to do this. And I believe Representative Neal has enough faith in student finance and in the educational institutions so that they will do a robust program that has a lot of responsibility attached to it on behalf of these students.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Let's see here. Chairman Carpenter.
Hey, thank you, guys. So yeah, that's actually where I was going to touch base on, right? So we talked a lot about, how many is this going to be? How many people are going to be getting into this Hope Fund? And I think, would it be fair to say that the schools would control that based on the number of classes that they offer on these subjects for this pathway, if you will? So they would have complete control over containing however many students they wanted to allow to go through this program.
And as well as the Student Finance Commission could also do regulations in that same fashion. That's right. They could say no more than 1% of whatever, but yes, they can put all the restrictions on it that they wanted to. They could kill it if they wanted to at the end of the day administratively. But at the end of the day, yes, the eligible institutions, as well as the student finance, as well as these mentoring committees that we're talking about, would all have their say in terms of how this program basically moves forward. This is the blueprint.
Thank you. And then one more follow-up. So obviously this came through my subcommittee and we talked about it at the time about the constitutionality of it. And it was immediately upon the bill, I reached out to lead counsel as well, because I had the same questions. And I proposed to them, Hope, and I don't know if they still do, but they used to give money for books. So when I was in school, I got a check for books. I didn't have to provide a receipt for whether I bought books or not, or used books or no books, or I borrowed my buddy's books. So in theory, I got a check that I could really do whatever I wanted to with it. I'm not sure if that still occurs or not. So that has occurred in Hope in the past. And, that's what I brought to lead counsel. Said, look, if this has happened in the past in the way, and sorry, my phone died, that had his reply to it. But basically it said that there is perchance an opportunity for this program to work with the guardrails of the classes, of the reporting mechanism, as well as the clawback if they don't follow through with what they're supposed to do. So I appreciate you bringing the bill.
Thank you. Chairman Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've expressed my support of this legislation in previous meetings, but I just want to say one thing. We live in a much different state now than we did 30 years ago when Hope became a reality. And I would like to think that, if the needs of young people were what they are now back then, I would like to think that maybe the authors of Hope may have thought about something like this. Spending my tax dollars or your tax dollars on a program, that's a policy decision. But this is lottery money, and it's really not going to cost anybody anything. There are guardrails that can be put into place, as the gentleman has spoke about. The sunset obviously was an issue that I had. If you get into this program and, you see it's not working, and I've said before, and I say it again, being a small business owner, I've seen so many small businesses fail. Overwhelming majority of these might fail, but then again, some of them may be very successful. So thank you for the work that you've done with this. And I certainly respect and appreciate the comments from those who have differing opinions than I do. I just see things from a little different perspective.
Very good. Number 24 down there. Chairman Washburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tried to read through the bill to see, we discussed the sunset this morning. Was it put in?
Yes. It's in two places. It's in 169 and I believe 194.
Okay, thank you. And how long would it be?
Till June 30th, 2028. So if assuming there is a need for a constitutional amendment and that amendment passes, we felt that would basically give this program about 5 years, so we can identify the failures and the successes that it may have, how many students did it, knowing bureaucracies the way I do. It may take a year to get all the regs in place before we do it. So we wanted to give it enough time going full bore that people could really see the kind of success stories or failures that exist.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. I've been listening carefully to the folks in opposition to this, and they are people I respect, of course. I believe this bill is a very creative way to help students who are non-traditional, who are not interested and are not going to go forward and get a higher degree. And I think it is very interesting approach, and I've commended you earlier for all your work on this. I think it is a very creative way for us to think about some of our workforce development issues, and for people who do not want to go to college or not going to college, but need to be productive citizens and doing valuable work and providing valuable service to the citizens of our state who are glad to pay for that work. And everywhere we turn, we hear about labor shortages and the need for workers. And so I am still supportive of your bill, and I plan to vote yes on it. Mr. Chairman, I told this story the other day, and I'm going to tell it again, if you don't mind. My brother, Daryl, my next brother down, and he has no idea I would mention his name in a committee meeting today. He's 2 years younger than me and is very bright, very gifted. He's an artisan. He does beautiful carpentry work and was a great builder. He just helped me finish a house that I bought to redo and resold, and he was invaluable to me in that process. He had no interest in going to college. He wanted to follow my daddy in the building business, and he did that. He does beautiful work. He never advertises. He never has to advertise. He always has work ahead of him because people call him, because he's honest and he's honorable and he's ethical and he does great work. And there are other kids out there, we shouldn't call them kids, but there are other young people out there in our state who are gifted, who will be productive citizens like my brother is, but they do need training and they need an opportunity to go to work. And the best way to learn, and I will say this to anybody, anytime, the best way to learn is by doing the work and not in the classroom. And that's whether you're a real estate broker or a mortician or a real estate magnate like the secretary here. I just wanted to tell you, I support the bill and I'll be voting yes on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Les, did I hear you say that there's over 700 million of surplus over what is constitutionally required to be in Hope?
Yes.
Could we set a ceiling amount, say if this bill wouldn't expend over $50 million in the next 5 years?
The legislature can do what it wishes to do, so that certainly would be an option that would be available.
The money is sitting there, $700 million That's a lot of money. And it's very possible that this can make a difference in some people's lives. And if we set a ceiling that this program would not spend over $50 million. I mean, you set that ceiling on it, then would that, I'm just asking if that would be a possibility, if that would make it more palatable. You know, that money is sitting there, it's for the students. It's not for us. It's for the students. And if we can encourage students and people to get more education, to learn how to go into business or do business. It's just a thought, just an idea.
Yeah. It certainly would be legislatively permissive to do that and to put those kind of caps on it. Again, it's the will of the legislature, how they want this done. As I indicated, between the regulations that have to be done by the schools and the student finance, there's a lot of belts and suspenders on this thing and controls, but certainly your suggestion is one that would also certainly financially control anybody who has any fear about this being a runaway program.
Right. This is not the locomotive running down the track without an engineer.
Right.
There is an end to it.
That's
It would
correct.
not exceed.
Right. So there would be just not only a time limitation, but a dollar
A
limitation.
dollar limitation.
Mhm.
You know, that's what I keep hearing everybody is concerned about. We don't want to break hope. We don't want to break hope. Well, we're not going to break hope. We've got $700 million in excess and we're only going to use 50 million of it.
Yes, at the appropriate time, if we want to make that amendment, more than open to it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, before everybody gets wound up, wants to start talking again, we have HR 581 in front of you. And I just wanted to see if I can expedite the discussion on that. From the morning conversation, there'd been so much discussion, it would probably need a constitutional amendment. This is a very simple two-pager. Sean Marie, would you address this to let us, give us your, if you would, put oil on this for us, just let us know if this is what is needed in the terms of the constitutional amendment.
To do is to provide for the funds that are currently used for lottery to be used for additional purposes. It doesn't specifically mention this program by name, but is done in a general manner, which it appears to me would provide for the underlying bill to move forward if this constitutional amendment was adopted. Typically in the Constitution, we don't put all of the specifics in there. We do put enough specifics to narrow it down the way that the General Assembly at that point in time wants to fix in the Constitution, but to be broad enough that it allows for leeway in terms of, you know, for instance, if you put something in the enabling legislation, and it turned out, you know, instead of 10,000, we want it to be 11, then the constitutional amendment would be broad enough to allow for that.
So your answer is yes.
Yes.
This is a proper format that would take care of the enabling legislation.
Yes, I do think so.
Very good. Thank you, Sean Marie. All right. Do we have anyone else who wishes to be heard on the committee before I open this up to anybody in the audience who wants to? Chairman Martin.
I'll wait, Mr. Chairman, till you take public comment. We will debate it if you get a motion.
Thank you. Now, do we have anyone in the audience that wishes to be heard on this matter? Did I hear there was somebody from the Atlanta Technical School here? Is that you? Oh, all right. Do you wish to be heard on this matter? Do you understand that brevity is of a commodity? Absolutely. Then please go to the podium. extra points for brevity.
Mr. Chairman, we do appreciate the representative for bringing this bill forward. We have worked with her in terms of determining that. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I think perhaps the representative shared the brochure that you had shared. So Atlanta Technical College has worked to develop the current curriculum for an entrepreneurship program that would be a part of this. So we have certainly been happy to see that be fleshed out over the last few months. I certainly won't speak to the constitutionality of it or anything along those lines, but it is a program of study that we are happy to help students with as they need it around the state. So happy to say that that is absolutely work that we've done. And if this bill moves forward, we'll be happy to help students as they move along with that. So.
Any questions from the gentleman? You got extra points. All right. Of course you do. You're recognized.
Oh, he already left. Can I still ask him the question?
You could ask him.
Just in terms of this program that you're seeing, do you see any concern that the money given, or let's say with everything you have in place, is strong belief that the money be given to the student to be used for business will be used for that purpose?
To be quite honest, I'm not sure how we speak to that. Our portion of it will be teaching the program. What the student does with that money after the fact, I don't really see how we would be able to control that if that's the question you're answering or asking me.
All right, thank you.
But there is wording in the bill that addresses that exact point, that they would have control over the money and how it was spent. That would be part of the follow-up that would be done.
All right. Thank you for your, anyone else here?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for him as well, if we come back.
All right.
I need the exercise, Mr. Chairman. It's fine. It's okay.
Go
Yes,
ahead,
sir.
Mr. Martin.
Yeah, I was just, you have been involved with our discussions over the past couple of years about getting the Hope reimbursement rate back up to 90% for our technical schools. Prior to the governor putting that in this year, wasn't your reimbursement rate about 74?
Yes, you're correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I mean, I don't know if you recall, but we've worked to get that rate up because of the concerns about the projections with Hope. We've worked on doing that 2 or 3 years. Are you familiar with how much adding that getting the technical schools and the universities up to 90? Didn't that cost $20 million extra?
It is a number somewhere in that ballpark, Mr. Chairman. I've slept since then and forgot the exact number, but
No, that's fair enough. I just wanted to ask that, and you know how hard it's been for us to get the executive branch on board with spending that much extra money in Hope, right?
that is correct, Mr. Chairman.
I just wanted to bring that up, Mr. Chairman, and we're flippantly throwing around $50 million here and $50 million there from Hope. The projections for Hope have been watched very carefully, and it's taken us a long time to get back up to 90. We're still not back up to 100. So I just respectfully tell the committee members that, you know, throwing out a sunset and a cap after laying Hope wide open with a constitutional amendment is probably going to be problematic. Thank you. Thank you for helping with that.
Thank you, Chairman Martin. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if we have no other questions or comments from the committee or anyone else in the audience, you got 2 propositions in front of you today. You've got HR 581 that we had determined earlier this morning that in a precaution that if this bill moved forward, the constitutional amendment would probably be in order. And we have that HR 581 as a committee substitute, LC 490814S. We have the enabling bill, LC 490946S. You have 2 propositions in front of you. Now I'm going to see if I can't cut this to the chase. I hear some are for it and some are against it. Generally, I'm with my friends on this, and but I would tell you that as best I can try to analyze this, that and to her credit, Ms. Neal has been very innovative with this. Very good idea. I'll go back to what I'd said. It's built in. that it's going to take, if it goes through the process, the legislative process, that this bill in itself and the concept of this is going to have several parts when it comes to the funding, as Chairman Martin has been so diligent to point out. One is going to be the system of the schools, the HOPE, the Student Finance Commission. And quite honestly, those are being controlled by a number of different facets. Then it goes to the institution itself, which college, which tech school, whether they want to do it. They can't just do it on their own if the water runs up, the water runs downstream. So, there's several safeguards here. And that's pretty well how I see it now. At some point, my opinion about the HOPE and the drain on the HOPE is pretty well known. I've been very plain spoken over the years of the changes that's been made in the HOPE. Quite honestly, I think it's really basically the stepchild to fund the university system. My friends with the tech schools, they've only always got a child's portion. But then I always said that the best money in post-secondary education was in the tech schools. In my day, if it had been HOPE, if I'd gone to tech school instead of going to college, I might actually have a job today. But that being said, what is the will of this committee?
Move to pass, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion from Representative Billy Mitchell.
Second.
We have a second from Representative Walensky. And I thought I also heard one mumbling that came faintly from my right over here. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We're going to do HR first. I'm sorry, let me stand corrected. If the HR doesn't pass, then I don't know if we need to move forward, but if it passes, let's move on. So we're on the resolution, ladies and gentlemen. Is that correct? The motion and second still stands? All right, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye, opposed.
All right. I think the ayes have it, but in abundance of precaution, let's move to the yays and the nays. Start at the end. We'll be device to this. Mr. Walensky. Nay. Online.
Nay.
All right. Chairman Martin.
Yay.
Chairman Martin.
No.
Who else is online?
Bennett.
Representative Mitchell.
Yay.
All right. Representative Bennett.
Yay. Yes.
Michael Smith.
This
Michael.
Representative Jackson,
Smith.
yes.
Representative Smith. Can you unmute yourself, Representative Smith? All right, any other members?
Yes, Representative Jackson is yes.
I think they've already got you, and thank you. All right, now has everybody had the opportunity to vote? What is the?
Representative Smith. Okay, that's 9-4 in favor.
9-4 in favor. The ayes have it. So HR 581 is passed with a do pass recommendation. All right, HB 1530, LC 490946S. Do I hear a motion? Do I hear a motion?
Move to pass, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Seconded, Mr. Chair.
Second. Now, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry. Beg your pardon?
Can you put your mic on?
So this is where I wanted to offer the amendment of the ceiling amount of money that
All right,
would come out of Hope.
state your motion, please.
Well, I'd like to, that no more than $50 million would be expended out of Hope funds in this program.
And where would you have a place that you'd like to expand? Is that a new section?
Wherever legislative council thinks that it might fit best.
Mr. Chair, if I can,
Mr. Chairman, we have a motion. It's
Marie.
Could you
Representative
state
Williams has
fully what
asked.
he wants? And then you can speak on.
well, if you already.
Everybody would hold at ease while our leg counsel is trying to find this place to put the language. Please do.
I support. I support the bill and the legislation. I think maybe 50 million may be a little high for this program.
Would you like to make a subsequent motion while she's looking?
I would just like to caution the committee when you're starting off on a program like this, that's a whole heck of a lot of money to be betting. Usually when I'm at the table, I start out small betting. I don't push all my chips in.
Well, you want to cut it 25?
Y'all, would you two gentlemen like to discuss and make a recommendation, or either there is a motion on the table, and if you want to make a subsequent motion to change his, whichever y'all care to do.
It's fine with me. I'm 10 million. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, while we're just shooting from the hip here, if we're going to limit it, then we're going to have to put in the legislation. It should be limited, even though you can't limit the constitutional amendment, is it true? If you're going to do that, then you're going to have to decide who gets it first and how do you give it to which school first. And, if you start thinking you're going to get it.
Chairman Martin, that would be decided by the higher authorities, the Student Finance Commission, the lottery.
Well, we're told in Ways and Means we need to outline it when there's competitiveness for a capped tax credit. So I was just using that same idea here. Revenue tells us they want us to figure it out in Ways and Means.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If we set a lower cap and the program becomes excessively popular as well as successful, are we able to go back and increase that cap, or would it be better to set the cap and up to $50 million?
Is that Ms. Bennett?
Yes, Ms. Bennett speaking.
You certainly could, Ms. Bennett. That's the reason the General Assembly meets on the second Monday of every January to change legislation, to fix problems that exist, and to either raise or lower caps, or to decide if there'll even be any spending period.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Bennett.
For a follow-up question, I'm on record as
Well,
not liking it, but if you're going to do it, I just want to point out a $10 million cap, also going to limit it to 500 students. So the gentle lady that just asked that question has got a good point. If you're going to do it, if your $10 million cap is 500 students.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. So
Mr.
can
Linsky.
we go back
Thank
to
you,
the
Chair.
50 million? Can we go back to the 50 million? How many would the 50 million be, Mr. Chairman?
My question would just be to the committee is that these are students who are qualifying for school with hope. If we leave it now, they will be using that money for hope. But they are making a decision to try this program. So by them trying this program, they're not using money that wouldn't have been used. They're using it for a different purpose that they're trying. And this legislation has a sunset clause. And so we are doing a pilot program. We're not using different money or added money. We are just letting a pilot program run for 6 years where students can decide to make that decision. And that student is making a very, very difficult decision, and some will work and some won't. But if we're talking about capping money, I don't understand, because this is not extra money. This is a decision that student's making that they would get anyways if we're not passing this legislation.
Mr. Chairman, I have to, the gentleman is not quite right in his
I've been told I'm not quite right.
This is not for people that are eligible for the Hope Scholarship. I draw the gentleman's attention to line 60. They meet residency requirements as 20-19. So there's 20-519-1. There's very open residency requirement, which is a bit different from the Hope Scholarship. So there are people that would be eligible for this that are in fact not eligible, as I understand it, from talking with student finance. Again, if President Riley's there, I'll let her confirm that for me. But 50-3-519.1, as long as you've lived in Georgia for 2 years, you would be eligible by residency. That is not the same thing, I believe, for Hope eligibility. Is President Riley there?
Oh, she's there.
All right. Ms. Council, are we getting closer?
Well, I'm done.
Well, you're recognized. Tell us, what is it, where you would put that amendment?
So I would put it on page 2 at line 30. After 20-3-519.12, just before the period, and I would say semicolon, provided, comma, however, comma, that no event shall the total amount of the Hope Small Business Grants awarded exceed $50 million.
Do you wish for your motion to stay at 50 million, Representative Williams?
Well, as Representative Williamson and I were discussing, if it's a 10 million, that's 500 students. 50 million would do 2,500 students. And that's total for 5 years too. I mean, that's not 50 million a year. That's total expenditure. So the lotteries and the Hope is going to be taking in more money as it goes, as the fact sheet that we got on how much money that the 27 million interest earned on reserves was returned to the Treasury in fiscal year 2019. I don't know.
All right,
I'd like to stay at 50 million.
we have a motion. We have a motion to amend on line 30
Yes,
after the section 20-5-519.12. Is that correct?
yes, in
With the
between the
parentheses.
0.12 and the period.
And that would be to limit it to a $50 million program. We have a motion. We have a second. We have a second. Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. How many?
No.
Aye.
No.
All right, the ayes again, please.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
I believe the ayes have it. All right. Now back to the original question. The original motion is to pass HB 1530 as amended. We'll do this as a committee substitute. All right. Any further questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye. Aye. Let me have the nays, please.
No.
No.
All right, let's do a head count. All right. Call them out.
We're so outdated.
Williams,
Williams. Williams.
aye. Washburn.
Washburn has left the building.
Okay, Williamson. Okay, Carpenter. Jaspers, he's left. Williamson. Okay, Collins. Mitchell. Oh, he's. Say both, Mitchell, no.
Aye. Mitchell, yes.
Chairman Martin.
No.
Speaker Pro Tem. No,
Speaker Pro Tem.
she's muted up right now. But yeah,
No.
Smith,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
5, 7 to 4. I'm sorry, Richard Ridley.
Ridley. We're voting on the main bill. Yes,
Okay, so that should be 10 to 4.
10-4, and the ayes have it.
Sorry about that.
Representative Neal, your bills are now, will be reported back to the Rules Committee. And I wish you the very best of luck. And as somebody who's been around this process a long time, you know, I think that your ideas have merit. It's late in this session to be dealing with this, but I would encourage you to continue to try to perfect it no matter what happens as this goes forward. And thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is now adjourned.